Well, hello again, guys. Now, as you can see, it's raining and there are dark clouds gathering over Newcastle scouting HQ over my shoulder there, and that is quite metaphoric, given it is at the stage now where Newcastle are scrambling to find not the replacement for Alexander Isak, but the one striker, the one replacement for Callum Wilson that they've known they had to do since June. Now, I'm going to insert at the end of this, probably recorded back at home, where I think they are with that, because I could have a couple of big updates on Norwegian strikers who may or may not be coming into Newcastle. So I'll save that for the very end. But for now, I'm going to bring you the latest on what was said inside there today with Eddie Howe, the latest on the Alexander Isak situation, who right now isn't training behind the trees. If we turn around and we stay here in the rain for the best part of 2 hours, we'll see Alexander Isak driving in as everybody else is driving out. He remains in exile. That's self-imposed exile. He is not going to play against Liverpool on Monday night, and the situation hasn't changed. But saying that, everything has changed since we last spoke because of the bombshell statement on Tuesday night. On the back of that, and I'm going to have to walk here, guys, so I'm not going to get wet. On the back of that, there's been a hardening of the club's, tricky word, hardening of the club's stance. Now, all summer, Newcastle have been open to exploring the possibility of a sale. Now, that has been evidenced by their pursuit of João Pedro, Liam Delap, Benjamin Sesko, Hugo Ekitike. Now, if any one of those four players had come in, coupled with the replacement for Callum Wilson from, let's call it the B list, well, yeah, Isak's sale to Liverpool, it might have happened, it may have happened. Now, on Tuesday night, on the back of the club statement, there was an absolute change in tone that Alexander Isak will be told he is going nowhere. Yes, in part motivated by market dynamics. They're struggling to bring in one striker, let alone two. But I think there was disappointment with the nature of the statement. I think there was a little bit of anger. And on the back of that, the message back was, Isak now, he is absolutely going nowhere. Now, could he still be sold to Liverpool? Could the deal happen? I would never commit to saying absolutely not, given there are 9 days of this window still to run. I do believe that Liverpool, having come this far and having clearly given a certain degree of encouragement and instruction by extension to Alexander Isak, they're not going to just walk away from this. I still do believe they will return and test the water and try and push. It would have to take a hell of an offer for Newcastle to consider now. But as they said in the club statement, there are conditions of sale. And the conditions of sale that would have allowed them to explore that or consider that were the two strikers coming in Liverpool returning with that acceptable offer. Now, none of that has been met so far. The club statement from Newcastle did leave the door ajar slightly to that. Now, if all of a sudden Newcastle signed two strikers and Liverpool returned with £150 million plus, would Alexander Isak go in the final days of the window? Yes, I think he probably would. But the odds on that happening now, guys, are so remote. Remote was the word being used to me on Tuesday before the statements had dropped. I've spoken in percentages around this all summer, haven't I? When I was out in South Korea and Singapore, given everything I was exposed to then, I was talking in terms of 70-30, Isak going to Liverpool. That was because I knew Newcastle were looking for those strikers, and I knew if Isak's desire, his wish, and Liverpool's want to. So those three things to happen, yeah, it was possible, and that was, to a degree, the eventuality everyone was working towards. Now, the longer time went on, those odds receded. By the time we got back to the UK, I was down to 50-50. Then it flipped to 70-30 in the other direction over the weekend when Newcastle ran into trouble with Johan Wissa, when other targets came and went, when the big ticket players from list A, they just weren't possible. None of them happened, and there weren't any players left on that very top list, barring perhaps Gonzalo Ramos. But the information on that for a while now has been an extremely difficult deal to do, unlikely to happen. So given all of that, coming into this week, yeah, it was 70-30, 80-20, even 90-10 in terms of Alexander Isak staying at Newcastle. Then, when the statements dropped of everything I've just spoken of, I honestly think now, guys, we're almost certain that he does stay a Newcastle player, even though that window remains open. Now, Eddie Howe did say in there with us today, it's a lose-lose situation for Newcastle. Quite a telling quote. Now, what did he mean by that? Well, lose-lose in that he either leaves or he stays against his wishes. Now, I understand why why Eddie say that. There is the third scenario, and this is scenario A. This is the scenario in Newcastle in which they win, really. Lose, win, if you like. And that is that Alexander Isak stays and he is reintegrated into the squad. That was a question I asked of Eddie. He said he's seen this so many times before with players where they can have a change of heart. They can change their mind if there's a change of circumstance. Now, the big change of circumstance here, which is going to be upon us in 9 days' time, is that the transfer window closes. And if Alexander Isak is still here with that move to Liverpool or wherever it may be, just if he wants to be anywhere but Newcastle, knowing that isn't going to happen until January at the earliest, what does he do? I really don't think, and the guys on the inside really don't think he's going to sit and play here for the under-21s every week. Not in a World Cup year, not at the peak of your powers, not at a club where bridges haven't been burnt with regards to Eddie Howe and his teammates, not where he would come back in and be welcomed, as Eddie Howe said the other side of that wall this morning. I spoke about the door to Liverpool being slightly ajar. The door to Alexander Isak coming back into the squad is massively ajar. It's wide open. Come on, we'll push the gate to demonstrate. Let's use this. So does it open? Yes. So that's the gate to Alexander Isak coming back in to Newcastle. It's what everybody wants inside the club. I've committed to this now, haven't I? And this, well, yeah, there's the slim little possibility. Could he squeeze through there and make his way to Merseyside before September the 1st? He could. All options are still at play. All options have been at play all summer. So when I did the live show the other night down in Mail HQ, they gave me my own TV studio, which was very nice. When I was asked the question from the Liverpool fan, could he still join Liverpool? I said yes, and I was later asked a question by a Newcastle fan, do I think he will? I said no. So that's where we're at now, guys. And coming out of, I was going to say out of there, looking at a wall isn't great for optics in the video, isn't it? But the other side of that wall is the press conference centre. Coming out of there this morning, I didn't really change my mind on that. Now, what did Eddie say? It's important to pick up on one point, which I see has gone round the world as these things do and has been misinterpreted to a degree. Now, Alexander Isak's statement on Tuesday night spoke of broken promises and trust being lost. Now, Eddie was asked inside this morning if, towards the end of last season, Alexander Isak had told him that he wanted to leave the club, he wanted to quit the club. Now, Eddie said, yeah, I'm not going to deny conversations took place. Now, that wasn't him committing to, yes, Alexander Isak told me he wanted to quit, but also then on the back of that, I think some people have interpreted it as, there you go, broken promises. Eddie and Alexander Isak had that conversation. He was told he could go. No, that wasn't the case. That's a misinterpretation. Eddie was admitting, because he doesn't want to lie, he never wants to lie, he was admitting to those conversations taking place without committing to the nature of those conversations. Well, I can tell you, and I've reported this all summer, I said this again in the live show on Wednesday night, Newcastle knew coming out of the season Alexander Isak wanted to go. He had communicated that to them. So that's me, that's my information, that's my take. So yeah, but I don't believe any promises were made. At no point to my information, and I've had this from every level of the club in terms of my sources, at no point was Alexander Isak told, be it in May, June, or going back to last summer, yeah, you can go. Absolutely, you can go at the end of the season. That was never the case. Now, they may have said, we're going, yes, we understand your wishes, as the club statement on Tuesday night revealed. It said, you know, they are open and understanding to a player's wishes and wants. Now, yes, that may have been communicated to him. And again, by the way this summer has played out, Newcastle looking for those replacements to satisfy the conditions of sale. Yeah, they have listened to Alexander Isak. They've tried. That is one of the best tools they've got in this. They can turn around to Alexander Isak and say, we haven't kept you here against your will. We haven't forced you to stay and said, you know, you just go and rot in the reserves. You're staying come hell or high water. They have looked to explore those other options. So when Eddie said that inside there today, he was admitting to those conversations, but at no point should it be interpreted as, yeah, we said you could go. Now, it stopped raining, so I'm going to have a walk back across the road, just so you've got Scouting HQ in the background there. You never know. I might shout out the window and ask if I've got any suggestions. Now, what was my take on the statements on Tuesday night? I've been pretty consistent on this, and that I've always said I think there's been an alternative way that Alexander Isak could have gone about that. Eddie Howe said as much himself this morning. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm okay with Alexander Isak wanting to leave Newcastle. I understand it on sporting and financial grounds. We can't routinely refer to him as the best striker in the world as we have done, and he is one of the best strikers in the world, and he then cannot be paid that amount accordingly. So his desire to be double your money, like, you know, if that's on offer at Liverpool, to take him from somewhere around 130, 140, 150 to double it, you can do the maths. You know, I understand that. I think that motivation is fair enough. I think, you know, anyone in any walk of life would be forgiven for feeling that. There's then the sporting side of it. So when he talks about broken promises, don't forget when Alexander Isak communicated at the end of last season, coming into summer, he wanted to go. That was on the back of 3 windows without Newcastle signing a player. There was no training ground, there was no stadium. There were infrastructural developments he thought would take place, coupled with ambition with regards to investment in the playing squad. And yes, there's PSR that hadn't happened. So when he talks about broken promises, it is multi-layered, and I'm not going to go over what I've spoken about so much this summer, about the soft promise of the contract from the previous co-owners. Then when Paul Mitchell came in and said, no, that is the crux of this, but I've spoken about that so often now. That must be committed to memory as a knowledge bank, you know, a base of understanding on this. That was what started all of this 12 months ago. But there was an alternative. So what is that? If Alexander Isak had released a statement earlier in the summer, instead of giving the club 3 brilliant years, nothing but respect from a teammate, for Eddie, for the supporters, if he had done that and shown more respect and more self-awareness, but then said, I think it's time to move on, I honestly think there would have been sympathy and understanding from inside the club and from you guys as supporters. The disappointment is the manner in which this has played out, and the statement on Tuesday night was disrespectful, I thought. It didn't mention supporters for a start. It then was very accusatory. It spoke of broken promises and relationships and trust lost, but it wasn't specific in that. So on the back of that, there was guessing games as to, has his relationship with Eddie Howe broken down? Is Eddie Howe the man who was guilty of broken promises? Now, that absolutely isn't my information. My understanding is that if there's any broken relationships or broken promises, it's with former employees of the club. So yeah, the statement left it so open-ended and allowed more noise to develop, and left Eddie Howe having to deal with another press conference this morning full of Alexander Isak questions when they've got a huge game in 3 days' time against Liverpool. Goodness, I say this every week, we'll get to talking about the football, and what a game, what an occasion that promises to be. But Eddie said he was sad. He was disappointed by the situation. Now, on the back of that sadness at Isak doing what he did with regards to the statement, Newcastle did respond. And while, again, Eddie said his preference would be for all of this to be played out behind closed doors, I thought the statement was good. I thought it was fair. I thought it was as strong as it could be. And again, it left all possibilities open to a degree, while again, you know, I'm not going to walk all the way back to my gate. It did close the gate still further and left us at the point now where yes, I'm absolutely convinced Alexander Isak will still be a Newcastle player come September the 2nd now, increasingly so. But the statement was firm. They had to do that. It was needs must, as Eddie said there this morning, and they did. The key point they made in all of it was, Alex, we've looked at the conditions of sale, we've tried. It hasn't happened. The door is open to come back in and be part of the family, and that is what they're looking at now. Because as Eddie said again inside there this morning, there actually is the possibility, believe it or not, that Newcastle don't get any strikers in. Now, if they didn't, that would leave Alexander Isak as the only striker at the club. They would then have to employ every tactic possible to get him back on board. That is still scenario A. If Newcastle keep Alexander Isak and bring in one other, be it Wissa or a Norwegian or whoever it may be, and I'll give that update at the end, then, wow, they've got an incredible squad, coupled with the business they've done. They still can win from this, even though Eddie said this morning, lose. There still is a win scenario. But as we stand here now, all possibilities are open. This isn't the last video. This isn't the end of it. Now it rolls on to Monday night, where Alexander Isak will not be playing for Newcastle. And tellingly as well, Eddie Howe said that he hadn't spoken to Isak since those statements on Tuesday night, which I think just gives you a little indication of where things are right now. So yeah, zero chance of Isak playing against Liverpool on Monday night or down at Leeds the weekend after. Everything now is going to be parked to see how it plays out in terms of does he stay or does he go. So there is a football match on Monday night, and what a game, what an atmosphere it promises to be. When I did my walk and talk Q&A out in Seoul, and I eventually settled with a beer, one of the questions was, what am I looking forward to most this season? I said, forget Champions League, forget everything beyond that. Liverpool v Newcastle on Monday night, the first home game of the season. Wow, what an occasion that promises to be. I've seen some atmospheres and, you know, the level of noise towards the back end of last season in some big games against the like of Chelsea. You go back to a lot of Liverpool matches, even Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. I think they're going to take this to a different level. Now, the only way to renovate St James's Park is by removing the Gallagher roof. Now, that might well be blown off on Monday night. It could be phase one of the redevelopment, potentially, such as the noise and the intensity of the atmosphere and the colour and the energy inside St James's. I can't wait. I really cannot. Now, what's going to happen? I'm just going to commit to this. Newcastle will not lose. I think because of everything around it, and that was my prediction there in Aston Villa last week. I thought they would come away with a draw. I don't think they'll lose. I think there'll be too much on this. And if the Amazon cameras were still rolling, I think Eddie Howe's team talk would absolutely be Hollywood box office television gold. I think he really will deliver one of those. If they want an effing game, let's give them an effing game team talks, as he did to much success against Manchester United a couple of seasons back. So yeah, I just don't think they'll lose. My concerns remain around Newcastle and scoring goals. Look at what played out at Aston Villa. Absolutely. Liverpool are a good team. We know, we understand why Alexander Isak does want to join them. But Newcastle are a good team too. Sandro Tonali, fantastic last week. Dan Burn, wow, Dan Burn. What is he going to do on Monday night? You know, that performance, I cannot wait to see Dan Burn in the first challenge he makes. So Newcastle, they will not lose. There you go. There's the football. Okay, I was going to record this section back in my Gosforth abode, but seeing as it's positively pleasant around here now, look at that, yeah. There's even a white cloud amidst the grey in the sky. I'm going to do it now, and this is just a little update on where I believe Newcastle to be. Now, it could have moved on. If so, I'll put a link in the description below the line. I'll take the very latest transfer piece at Daily Mail Sport. Now, my information now as I stand here is that today is potentially D-Day with regards Yoane Wissa. Now, I'm not going to go back over everything that's happened, or rather hasn't happened, but Wissa wants to join Newcastle. Newcastle want to sign Wissa, but they're going to have to get answers by the end of the day, is what I'm told. Now, we've been there before, big 24 hours, big 48 hours, but that's the latest information into me as of this morning. Now, on the back of this, Newcastle are spinning plates. They are in the building there behind us, and that information is then being taken over to, not the shed, yeah, there's a training ground just behind there. And desperately now they are trying to find a solution to replace Callum Wilson, working towards bringing that one striker in. As I said, if all of a sudden two presented itself and they wanted to act on them, and they could, well, yeah, they might, and then those dominoes might fall with regard to Isak. But right now, that's not going to happen. That's the information that to me. It's all focused on that one player, whoever that may be. The preference, the number one, that remains Wissa, but Wissa is in doubt. So they are looking at options, other alternatives. Strand Larsen at Wolves was the name I broke a couple of weeks ago. Now, my information on that, guys, is yes, they absolutely like him. I said in the live show on Wednesday night, he's the next cab off the rank. But Wolves don't want to sell. My information as of now is an offer hasn't gone in, and that because of Wolves' valuation being so high and the determination that they just don't want to let him go. Newcastle haven't got time to go down those avenues. They need to act and move on players who want to come in with a club who are willing to sell. That is why I bring this name to the table. I know now it is being discussed. It's the latest one in the orbit of players they could move on. And that is another Alexander Soloth at Atletico Madrid. Now, he's available. His goals record is quite incredible when you look at the amount of goals he scored in La Liga for Atletico Madrid. He played at St James's. It's not St James's, but it's over there somewhere. He played at St James's a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely in the mould of his countryman Strand Larsen as well. Big, tall, powerful centre forward, a record of doing it in the top divisions. That's the latest information. And to me, that Soloth was one of the names being considered. There are others too. Now, there's got to be, because even though Eddie Howe said it was a possibility this morning, for me, it's absolutely unthinkable if the only scenario is that Newcastle finish this window with Alexander Isak as the only striker on the books. So still so much to play out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll put the link to the live show I did in the description below the line there. You can go and pay to join up. I think it's only $1.99 a month to join Daily Mail Sport, and you get to watch all of that hour-long show from London, plus all of the written pieces there are around this, and there's so much to report on. So yeah, we roll on, guys, again into a free weekend before Monday night. I cannot wait, and I dare say you guys can't too. So please hit like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you again from outside St James's, reflecting on what will not be a Newcastle defeat. I think they'll get a result from this one. Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.